Do not feed her. She is not a customer. Grant Maddox said it loud enough for the whole diner to hear, and for one cold second, every fork stopped halfway to every mouth. Rain hammered the windows of Hartwell Table on the edge of Cedar Falls, Ohio, turning the parking lot lights into trembling yellow clouds. The place smelled of burnt coffee, warm grease, and old vinyl booths wiped clean too many times. In the corner sat a woman in a faded gray coat, her hair damp from the storm, her hands folded around an empty paper cup like it still held heat. Her name, for that night, was Ellie Warren. At least, that was the name she had given the waitress when she asked for something small, anything warm, and promised she would pay when she could. The waitress had looked at her shoes first, then her coat, then the empty cup. "This is not a shelter," she muttered. A man in a blue dress shirt laughed under his breath. Another woman pulled her purse closer. Ellie lowered her eyes, and that was when Caleb Mercer walked in with $6.80 in his pocket, a plastic pharmacy bag under one arm, and the tired walk of a father who had already spent the day being strong. He did not look like a hero. His jacket was worn at the cuffs. His boots had salt stains from last winter that never fully came out. His face carried the quiet exhaustion of double shifts, overdue bills, and bedtime stories read with an empty stomach. At home, his 8-year-old daughter, Nora, was waiting in their small apartment above a shuttered hardware store, probably drawing houses with yellow windows the way she always did when she wanted the world to feel safe. Caleb had promised her supper. Not much. Tomato soup, 2 slices of bread, maybe a little butter if the cook was feeling generous. It was supposed to be their last meal before payday, stretched carefully, divided fairly, made cheerful by a father who knew how to smile around hunger. He ordered it at the counter and paid with folded bills and coins warmed by his palm. Then he heard Grant's voice. "Escort her out." Ellie stood slowly, cheeks flushed with shame, not anger. "I am sorry," she said. "I just needed to sit for a minute." "Then, sit outside," Grant replied. 3 quick chuckles followed. One from the man in the blue shirt, one from the waitress, one from a young assistant manager who wanted badly to be noticed. Caleb turned with the tray in his hands. The soup trembled inside the white bowl. The bread steamed against a paper napkin. He looked at Ellie, then at the door, where rain swept sideways across the sidewalk. He took one breath, the kind a man takes when he knows doing the right thing will cost him something. Then he walked to her table and set the tray down. "She is a customer tonight," Caleb said quietly. Grant looked him over and smiled without warmth. "And who exactly are you?" Caleb slid the spoon beside the bowl. "Just a man sharing dinner." "With what money?" someone whispered. Caleb heard it. Ellie heard it. The whole room heard it. But Caleb only pulled the paper napkin from beneath the bread, folded one slice carefully, and tucked it into his jacket pocket for Nora. "Eat while it is hot," he told Ellie. She stared at him as if he had handed her something far greater. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and second chances, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here." Now, back to Caleb Mercer, because no one in that diner knew the woman they had just humiliated was Evelyn Hartwell, the chief executive officer of the company that owned every table, every sign, and every secret in that room. Caleb did not know her real name, and that mattered more than anyone in the room understood. If he had known she was Evelyn Hartwell, if he had known her signature could open banks, fire executives, and move entire markets before breakfast, the gift might have looked smaller. But he knew nothing except that a woman was wet, hungry, and being made to feel invisible. So he stood there with his hands empty and his daughter's bread folded inside his jacket pocket, while Grant Maddox stared at him like poverty was something contagious. "You think this makes you noble?" Grant asked. Caleb did not answer right away. The rain kept tapping the glass. The fluorescent lights hummed above the counter. Somewhere in the kitchen, a metal pan clicked against a stove, sharp and lonely. "No," Caleb said at last. "I think it makes her warm for 10 minutes. A few people looked down, not because Caleb had shamed them loudly, but because he had refused to. That was always his way. He carried pain like a man carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs, one step at a time, without asking who was watching. Caleb Mercer had not planned on becoming the kind of father who counted quarters in the laundry room and pretended breakfast for dinner was a treat. 10 years earlier, he had worked installation for a heating and cooling company, made decent money, and came home every evening to a little house with porch lights and laughter in the walls. Then his wife, Hannah, got sick. Then the bills came. Then the house went. Then Hannah was gone, and Caleb was left with Nora, a box of photographs, and a promise whispered beside a hospital bed. Keep her safe, keep her kind, and never let the world teach her that love depends on money. Since then, every day had become a careful negotiation with survival. Rent first, electricity second, medicine when Nora's asthma acted up, food whenever there was enough left to make it look normal. He worked overnight unloading trucks at a food distribution warehouse on Route 62, then picked up repair jobs on weekends, fixing porch lights, loose cabinet doors, old dryers, and anything else people were willing to pay $30 for. Still, the apartment stayed cold near the windows, and the refrigerator made a hollow sound when Nora opened it, as if even the shelves were embarrassed. What Caleb feared most was not hunger. He could endure hunger. He had done it quietly enough that Nora almost never noticed. What he feared was the manila envelope on his kitchen table, the one from family services, the one that said his custody arrangement would be reviewed if he could not show stable income, proper housing conditions, and consistent meals. Those words had followed him all day. Stable, proper, consistent. Words built for people with savings accounts and second cars, not for a father who patched his daughter's winter coat with thread from an old work shirt. Earlier that evening, Nora had stood by the window in her pajamas, holding a crayon drawing of the two of them at a long table covered in food. "Daddy," she had asked, "when payday comes, can we get the soup with the little noodles?" Caleb had smiled as if that question did not break something small inside him. "We can do better than that, sweetheart," he said. "Maybe bread too." She had grinned like he had promised her a castle. That was why he had stopped at the diner after his shift. That was why the meal mattered. It was not just soup. It was proof that he could still bring something home. And yet, standing under those buzzing lights, watching Ellie lift the spoon with trembling hands, Caleb felt no regret. Only a quiet ache, and beneath it, a strange peace. Because a man with almost nothing still has a choice. He can guard the little he has until it turns hard inside him. Or he can give one piece away and remember he is still human. Across the table, Ellie took one small bite, and her eyes filled with something she tried to hide. Caleb looked away to protect her dignity. Grant saw only a poor man wasting food on a poorer woman. But Ellie saw the folded napkin in Caleb's pocket, the careful way he saved half a slice of bread for someone he loved, and for the first time that day, the powerful woman beneath the old gray coat began to feel ashamed. Ellie lowered the spoon into the soup again, but her mind was no longer in the diner. It was back in the glass tower in Columbus that morning, 42 floors above streets where people hurried with coffee cups and clean shoes, where no one looked hungry unless hunger had been turned into a charm. At 8:15, Evelyn Hartwell had sat at the head of a polished walnut conference table while Grant Maddox clicked through a presentation filled with smiling families, warm meals, and words like community, compassion, and access. The numbers were perfect. Too perfect. Food waste was down. Labor costs were down. Public approval was up. Grant had stood beside the screen in a Navy suit, his voice smooth as expensive leather. "The regional system is stronger than ever," he said. "Lean, efficient, profitable." Evelyn had watched the slide change to a photograph of a little boy holding a bowl of soup under the Hartwell Table logo, and something inside her had gone still. "What happened to the community meal program?" she asked. Grant did not blink. "Reallocated." "That was not my question." "It was underused," he said. "Expensive. Difficult to manage. People abused it." 3 answers, quick and polished. 2 board members nodded. 1 assistant kept typing as if morality could be recorded in bullet points. Evelyn leaned back and looked at the photograph again. The boy in the picture was not from one of their stores. She knew it because she had approved that campaign herself 7 years ago, back when her father was still alive and Hartwell Foods still believed a restaurant had a duty beyond profit. Her father used to say food was never just food. It was welcome. It was dignity. It was the first language of mercy. But after his death, the company had grown faster than her grief could keep up with, and men like Grant had learned to wrap cold decisions in cold words. Then came the envelope. It had arrived without a return address, delivered to Evelyn's private office by security. Inside were three things: a printed complaint from a former warehouse worker, photographs of sealed trays of edible food dumped behind a store, and a handwritten note that said, "They are using your name to turn hungry people away." At the bottom was one more line: "Ask about Cedar Falls." Evelyn had read it twice, then a third time. "Who sent this?" she asked her chief of staff. "We do not know yet." "Does Grant know?" "Not unless you tell her." So Evelyn did not tell her. Instead, she canceled her afternoon meetings, removed the diamond watch her mother had given her, left her phone and driver behind, and bought an old gray coat from a thrift store 3 blocks away. She took 87 cents in change, a bus pass, and the name Ellie Warren, a name plain enough to disappear inside. All day, she walked into places that carried her family's logo. At one location, a cashier told her the restroom was for paying customers only. At another, a manager asked her to leave before lunch traffic arrived. At a supermarket owned by her company, a security guard followed her down the canned goods aisle until she stepped back into the cold. No one shouted at first. That was the surprising part. Cruelty did not always begin with volume. Sometimes it came softly, through a smile that did not reach the eyes, through a policy recited without mercy, through a door held open only so someone could be pushed out of it. By the time she reached Cedar Falls, rain had soaked through her shoes, and her pride had worn thinner than the coat around her shoulders. She had wanted the truth. Now the truth was sitting across from her in the form of a tired man who had given away the meal meant for his child. Caleb Mercer did not know he had become evidence. He did not know that every quiet insult in that diner was being written into Evelyn's memory like testimony. He only stood near the table, steady and hungry, while Grant Maddox smiled at him as if goodness was a mistake that needed correcting. Grant stepped closer to Caleb's table, his polished shoes stopping just short of the puddle dripping from Ellie's coat. "You are making everyone uncomfortable," he said. Caleb looked around the diner, at the lowered eyes, the half-finished plates, the phones quietly angled toward him. "No," Caleb said. "Hunger makes people uncomfortable. I am just putting a bowl in front of you." The words were not loud, but they traveled. Ellie kept her hands around the spoon, afraid that if she moved too quickly, the whole fragile mercy of the moment would break. The soup was simple, tomato with a little black pepper and a few soft noodles settled at the bottom, but to her it tasted like something older than comfort. It tasted like being seen without having to prove she deserved it. Caleb stood beside the booth, not sitting, not hovering, just close enough to make sure Grant did not reach for the tray again. "You do this often?" Ellie asked quietly. Caleb glanced down at her. "Do what?" "Give away dinner." He gave a small tired smile. "Only when someone needs it more." "And do you?" she asked. "Need it?" Caleb looked toward the window where rain ran down the glass in silver lines. For a moment, the diner noise thinned into the hum of lights and the soft scrape of a chair leg across tile. He could have lied easily. Men like him learned to lie kindly. "I already ate. I have food at home. I am fine." But something in Ellie's eyes asked for truth without demanding it. "I have a little girl waiting," he said. "Her name is Nora." Ellie lowered the spoon. "Then you should take this back." "No, please. Eat." 3 small words. No speech. No performance. Just a line drawn with quiet dignity. Caleb reached into his jacket pocket and touched the folded bread wrapped in the paper napkin. He had tucked it away before Ellie could notice, but she had noticed everything tonight. The napkin had a purple crayon heart on one corner, uneven and bright, with the letter N written backward beside it. "She drew that?" Ellie asked. Caleb looked surprised, then softened. "This morning. She puts hearts on things she wants me to remember." "What did she want you to remember today?" He rubbed his thumb gently over the folded edge. "To come home." Ellie's throat tightened. All day, she had been turned away by people trained to measure worth at the register. Now a man with salt-stained boots and a custody notice probably waiting on his kitchen table was saving half a slice of bread like it was treasure. Caleb did not know that his small act was undoing years of Evelyn Hartwell's carefully protected distance. He did not know that the woman in the gray coat had sat through $100 million negotiations without trembling, yet now could barely swallow because a child's crayon heart had made her feel the weight of every cold policy signed under her name. Grant folded his arms. "This is sentimental nonsense," he said. "Sir, I am going to ask you one last time to leave." Caleb turned to him fully. "And I am going to ask you one last time to let her finish eating." The waitress froze near the coffee station. The assistant manager stopped smiling. Even the man in the blue shirt lowered his phone. Not because Caleb sounded threatening. He did not. His voice stayed calm, almost gentle. But there are moments when calm becomes stronger than anger, when respect stands so still that disrespect has to reveal itself. Ellie took another spoonful because Caleb had protected not just her hunger, but her dignity. Then she looked at the napkin in his pocket again, at the little purple heart meant for a child waiting at home, and she understood that this meal was not the last thing Caleb had. It was the last thing he could afford to give, and somehow he had given it without making her feel poor. Grant's smile thinned, and for the first time that night, irritation cut through the polish. He looked at Caleb more carefully, not as a stranger anymore, but as a problem he had seen before in another room under harsher lights. Mercer, Grant said slowly. Caleb Mercer. The waitress glanced up. The assistant manager shifted his weight. Caleb did not move. You work at the Route 62 distribution warehouse, Grant continued, loud enough to make sure the name spread from booth to booth. Night shift. Loading dock. I remember now. Caleb's eyes stayed steady, but something tightened in his jaw. Ellie noticed it. So did Grant. You are the one who filed those ridiculous complaints, Grant said. The one who claimed edible food was being thrown away. Caleb answered quietly. It was not a claim. It was an accusation. It was food. 3 words, plain and heavy. The diner seemed to shrink around them. Outside, the storm pressed hard against the windows. Inside, the air carried the smell of soup, coffee, and something colder than rain. Grant took one step closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound personal while still letting everyone hear. You know what I think? I think men like you love a cause because it distracts from failure. You cannot fix your own life, so you point at everyone else's. Caleb's hands relaxed at his sides. He did not defend his poverty. He did not list the shifts, the bills, the nights Nora slept warm because he stayed cold. A person with dignity does not always answer every insult. Sometimes he lets the insult stand there, naked and ashamed of itself.